Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. Today we're diving into a topic that sits at the intersection of market demand and business growth, and how you as a telco can turn DDoS and botnet protection basically into value-added services that are designed specifically for the small and medium enterprise segment. But first, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand in the resource section of the Allot website when you select webinars on demand in the resource type filter. Feel free to ask questions through the webinar using our Q&A window. Right, that's not the chat one. Right next to it, you can see the Q&A window. It's on the right side of the screen, and there will be a Q&A session after the presentation. And obviously, we will do our best to answer all of your questions. So feel free to share if you want to learn something, if you have a certain challenge that you're facing. And as you can see in this slide, the session is structured around a practical go-to-market handbook. It's a comprehensive playbook for selling network-based security to small and medium-sized businesses. And this isn't just about technology. You know, it's about unlocking new source of recurring revenue. It's about building stickier relationship with your customers and increasing your brand relevance in an increasingly security conscious market. So we'll walk you through basically the entire journey together. So from the opportunity sizing to objection handling to packaging and pricing, all the way through the launch and retention. So let's get started. Now, allow me to introduce our guest speaker today. And, you know, in the world of cybersecurity, there are practitioners, experts, and then there are the true pioneers who have shaped the field as we know it. Our next speaker, Dr. Ed Amoroso, is firmly in the last category. And for over a decade, he served as the senior vice president and the first ever chief security officer at AT&T, securing one of the largest and most complex networks in the world. His expertise has been sought as at the highest levels, and he has been advising to 4 US presidential administrations on national security and cyber policy. Today, he is the CEO of the renowned research and advisory firm TAG Cyber. He continues to guide the industry forward, and he is quite literally the man who wrote the book on cybersecurity. So we are fortunate to have him here and share his wisdom with us. It is my honor to introduce Ed Amoroso. Hi, Ed.
Nir, thank you for all that. That sounds so nice. That stuff about advising governments, I'm not sure I want to brag about that. Like cyber is such a mess globally. Maybe that's not much of a calling card, but thank you. I was excited when Allot asked me to talk about DDoS. This is a topic that has been very near and dear to my heart the last 25 years. But back in 1999 is when I first became aware of the problem. We were all preparing, and anybody's like in age 20-something or even 30-something may not remember Y2K, but we were preparing for this Y2K thing. And I was helping to run a center for the government. We were keeping track of the transition to Y2K. And I became aware of DDoS, this idea that we were then calling them zombie nets, and then now we call it a botnet, and you're all pretty familiar with that. But the idea that I could bounce something off of a botnet and have it amplify and then redirect to a target kind of freaked me out. I thought, they could do that to our Y2K center. They didn't, but that's the first time I had that guttural feeling that this is way too easy a thing to aim at someone. And you all know what's happened since. DDoS has become a big problem. It's become something that, has so many unique elements. I'm going to take you through today. I'll spend a little over a half hour or so on not just how this threat works, but rather how you as a service provider, ISP, communication service provider, can integrate this. I've often thought it's the right thing to do. Like DDoS strikes me as the kind of threat that demands that you be practical, that you have integrated controls wherever you can put them. And I'll show you more or less as sellers of this or as integrators of this. There may be some people here that would be buyers of this. How this can be pretty painless and a pretty good idea in terms of growing your average revenue, like the proverbial ARPU, is something that I can see being affected very positively if you listen here and you think this through, and you maybe adopt a strategy where DDoS can become part of your offering. And we're going to focus today on selling to small and medium enterprise, SMEs. Some people might refer to them as SMBs. In the old days, you did this if you were running a Fort Knox thing. You were worried about like that Y2K center. You're on some big thing. You worried about DDoS. And I think we've watched it sort of monotonically just transition gradually toward everybody needs to worry about this because it's automated. The attacks are automated. They're going to go after whatever. And I'll show you some of the unique elements here in talking to an SME or to a smaller enterprise as their service provider about how you can do some things to help. You're not going to solve the entire problem, as we'll talk about, but this is also something that, as I'll show you, is really easy to deploy and strikes me as a very sensible purchase. And believe me, I've spent a lifetime in telecom and in security, not just as a CISO, but I also ran all the managed services and was very, very involved in the marketing and business development and selling of DDoS services, which I know most telecoms still consider to be a very important service. But a lot of you are probably thinking, yeah, fine, if you're selling DDoS to Bank of America, but what about when I'm selling to an SMB or an SME? That's what we're going to focus on today, how we what some of the different personas are, the value prop for you as a service provider and for the buyer, a little bit about packaging and go to market. So we're going to get a little nerdy about the business stuff today, not just the tech. We'll get a little bit of the tech, but I'm assuming that most of you have a general working knowledge of what we mean when we say DDoS and how it works and how it operates. But one thing I'll just say sort of as an umbrella statement, it's spectacularly easy to launch a DDoS attack. And if you don't even know how to do it, you can go to the dark web and hire someone to do it. It's as simple as who are you going after? And boom, and then you pay in Bitcoin or something, and there you go. So you don't even really have to be an administrator to do it. And that, for me as a lifetime service provider in security, that's a little frightening. Like it gets way too easy. So we got to do some things that make sense to try to reduce the threat. So let me talk a little bit about market because this is the first thing that comes up. Seth, did you I saw you raise your hand, Seth. Is there anything you wanted to share there? Okay, that's fine. If anybody does want to chime in, please raise your hand. I'm a college professor, so happy to have people kind of interact as we're going through this. But the market opportunity here is I think for most of you listening, when you're planning out or making a decision about adding a capability to your overall service, say to the broadband or internet or even wireless service that you're providing, it's not so much like, say, the total size, total addressable market. That's irrelevant, but rather how can we grow our average revenue? How can I up say the monthly fees that we're charging people? So when you're thinking that through, I do think that it makes sense to think in a larger context about what the opportunity is. So DDoS attacks definitely up, but the second one is a big one. this is the kind of thing that when I'm describing this to smaller enterprise, which we do often, they'll say, well, why do I need DDoS service? What's the reason? And it's that second thing here on the in the table. It's that IT staff pressure. Here's what happens. When you do get tangled up into one of these things, you're a small enterprise and you're noticing some problem, you get the sense that there's a DDoS going on, because anybody who has any practical experience here knows that you usually don't know what's happening. Your connection is down, something's not right. You toggle power on the router, and then suddenly your IT staff stops everything they're doing and they have to figure out what's going on. My experience is this is a pain in the neck. Now, I know a lot of people say, all right, well, we'll just send everybody home to work. And, we got a lot of cloud, services, so we can still hit them. We just can't hit them from the office. Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Go ahead, but that is a pain in the neck. I think that this idea that your IT staff has to stop, dive in, figure out what's going on. You have to find a way to get people reconnected to cloud. It's a disruption. And I think there's a lot of businesses where you can almost do the math on, lost sales, deals, support, you name it. So that, to me, as a practitioner, is I think it's probably the most powerful piece in terms of market here, as you're talking to your customers and you're asking them, would they like to integrate this kind of service from a lot which you'd provide natively through your service? It's that one. If they go, well, I don't really see a threat, or I wrote compliance pressures here. This is, we'll get to this a little bit later. There are a lot of checklists where they're starting to ask about network security, and this would certainly help there. And yes, people are coming back to the office. We all know those. But I think the most powerful sort of piece on this chart is that I do think IT staff pressure is something you want to preserve. Now, these are all things that I've heard a million years, so many times, from large, mid-sized, and smaller companies. And we thought we'd just list them because my suspicion is that as you begin the discussion, not only with your sales teams about providing this capability, but any of you talking to an SME who might be thinking, oh, okay, I should be using DDoS. They might say something about firewalls. And yeah, I mean, if they have a firewall, sitting at the north or southbound interface of their router, yeah, I mean, there might be some ability to block, but we can block this thing long before that. That's architectural. I think that might be useful with some of the folks who are a little bit more, in the administrative side, or maybe there's an IT manager. But the next one's a big one. They're going to go, what's the problem? We're just using cloud apps. Why would we need DDoS servers? I need the DDoS to stop like SAP or Salesforce from being taken out, and that sits on their network. And that's absolutely true. Like for SMEs and SMBs, you do want to have an end-to-end perspective, and I'm guessing that most of you who work in service provider environments do offer that kind of advisory. And I'm sure that's something you'll be telling people if they're hosted in Amazon or hosted in GCP. There's a lot that they can do. But for the office, for the small office, or for whatever network they've got, this is still a problem. And I think it's more a problem of administration. I think you can reassemble teams to hit cloud apps. I mean, I guess you could probably use hotspots and all. These are really, really disruptive kinds of things. They're not fun. You can do it. Like, I think it wouldn't be wise to go in and talk to an SME and say, hey, if we knock out your office network, oh my gosh, you're completely out of business. It's probably not right. I mean, for some it might be, maybe some of the more deliberate business. Think a hospital. You can't pick up a hospital and move it, or a healthcare center. There's some things, or a small manufacturing group can't move that. But, like a team of lawyers or something, they should be buying this. And if they say we all use cloud apps, that's fine. But they also have an office. And I think that it seems to me just makes sense. It's a very sensible decision to protect that kind of this kind of attack from hitting. There's a couple others I have in there, and technical and delays. You might get that. And yeah, I mean, obviously this is going to be a non-noticeable delay on anything. These are, we've optimized this. I've been involved in a lot of the optimizations of how these things work, over the last 25 years. This is not something brand new. And the configuration piece we'll get to, but I'll mention, you all know that when you buy cybersecurity tools, or when you try as an ISP to sell cybersecurity to an SME, the first thing that comes up is this hard to configure? Is this a problem? And a lot of times the answer is just yes. That's not the case here. This is easy stuff to configure. But let's take an example of something that isn't, like when you try to reach in and do full endpoint control or encryption, data encryption, that kind of thing. Man, that is hard, because then you're reaching into the company and you're touching things that if they break, you're going to get blamed for. DDoS is the kind of thing where the configuration is so simple. You can, I mean, is it flip a switch? It's almost, there's a few things that have to be done, but it's about as close as you can get to just flipping a switch. So from a sales perspective, it's a dream. You can tell your customer, we're going to help you with this problem. It's sensible. It's easy to configure. You don't have to do anything. Now, what has to be done? Well, yeah, you have to be doing business here with a lot. You got to drop their platform into your infrastructure, which is maybe for another discussion. As I said, we were going to get nerdy about the business stuff today, as opposed to really how, BGP and other types of things work in the network. That's something that you could certainly reach out to a lot for more experience here. But this idea that, there'd be some configuration problem, that is one of the most powerful, I think, personally, I think, selling points here, in dealing with, somebody who might have some objection. Now, who are you going to be selling this to? That first one's as owner CEO is usually the case. Like an SME, say less than 100 people. The owner is going to be involved in the decision, because they're probably making decisions about the service being procured. There may be an IT manager. Almost everybody has, and I've seen that been called like an office manager sometimes. So if you have experience selling into larger companies, then you'd have, it would be the chief information security officer, IT operations. All those are for bigger companies. When you get to a smaller company, it's more tire hit the road kind of stuff. It's the person managing the office, managing the equipment, dealing with the ISPs, and maybe the owner or president or CEO of the company. So with those personas, these are very practical people. These are not people that are trying to impress anyone. They just want to get their business done. They might be making, it might be a bakery where they're making cookies, or it could be a place where they're doing the insurance. They might be a small broker. There's a wild assortment of things, but the owner is obsessed with their business. They're not going to be sitting around asking to be trained on cybersecurity. So the persona here, when they say, we're just a little company, or the IT manager goes, seems like too much work, I think those are easy to refute, because we can show them that this kind of is a problem. And oh, by the way, no overhead, no configuration, check here, we'll take care of everything. They're going to make life very simple for you. And I know that as a business owner myself, TAG is a small business. I make those kinds of decisions every day. Do you buy insurance or not? Well, how easy is it? What's the return on my investment here? And a lot of it is, you see at the bottom there, compliance officer. If you're selling to larger companies, you got to build your case as a small company that you're taking cybersecurity seriously. And that's one that the CEO, the owner CEO, is going to resonate with, because every single day that CEO is hearing, because they're a third party, they're hearing from third party risk managers that they need to fill out this 356 line EGRC form for the TPRM, the third party risk management program. So that's a gigantic headache, and probably the IT manager also feels that headache. And a lot of times they're not sure what to put next to network security. It's always in there. This kind of thing makes life easier, and it'll make it easier for them to win contracts and to be a better third party. So all of that kind of stuff, keep in mind the persona here is a group of people that are intensely practical. They're focused on their business. They're not, again, not trying to impress anyone. They're merely trying to win business. They want to be in business. They want to sell. They want, simplicity. They want something that gives them an edge. And this is the kind of thing. Even if they don't, frankly, even if they don't understand the first thing about what you're talking about, they will understand that you're cleaning the connection, you're preventing certain types of attacks to their office, and you're giving them something that'll make it easier to fill out these GRC questionnaires that come from their bigger customers. They're going to get that. That's their language, and they'll be very comfortable with that kind of an approach. Let's talk about value prop. This is kind of funny because there's a value prop for two here, right? I mean, it's the, again, as a service provider person myself, I've all those years in telecom, I know what it is to be a CSP or ISP service provider. I know what types of things matter. And now, again, as a small business owner myself, I understand the kinds of things that matter there. Combine that with my background in DDoS, and I think this webinar was invented for me to deliver it to you. That's why I was so excited to do this with a lot. But let's start with the SME. Uninterrupted business. So the keyword there is uninterrupted. I personally think for most businesses, they can find a workaround if they had a DDoS, but you shouldn't have to. And it could be spectacularly disruptive. That's the whole point. Now, again, hospitals, certain, like any kind of an OT environment, forget it. If you get DDoS, you really do have a problem. Now, you'd say, by the way, what's being DDoSed? It's anything in your network, right? It's not just your gateway. It could be something in your network. It could be a device. It could be something that's just gotten tangled into something. So anything that's going to clog your gateway is a problem. And I don't know, if I'm a small business, it may not be my top risk. Maybe top risk is something else. This is not like we're protecting you from your business kind of going out of business or something, but this is quite a nuisance. It's that kind of a value prop. I don't think a lot of doom and gloom here is going to help you sell anything, because they're not going to listen to you if you go in with doom and gloom. But very practical reminder that there could be some business continuity issues here. So why don't we prevent them? You got my ear every day of the week if you're talking in a very sensible term. And you can see the stuff underneath that for SMEs. It's always on. There's not a lot you have to do. I've already touched on those themes, and those are important. Now, for you as a service provider, this word that I learned from our marketing teams in telecom years ago, that frictionless, as a physicist, I thought it meant something else, but in marketing, it means want the customer to have to do anything. If the customer literally has to lift a finger, I think the amount of take rate goes way down. Like, oh, just click here, do that, forget it. But if there's nothing they have to do, we just provision it, and then you're providing that sort of prophylactic protection for them. You're going to get them. They're going to say, hey, this is good. So frictionless with your marketing teams in service provider environment is a really big value prop around this type of protection, and it extends to your customers. The monetization you'll have to think through. I personally think it's sort of an easy sell. This is an add-on. This is the kind of thing that you can work out a deal with a lot. They can give you some of the specifics, and Nira's here. And towards the end of the webinar, I'm going to turn it over to Nira. I'll give you some of the specifics on the service, but you can talk to them about monetizing. There's a lot of variables in there, but this is the kind of thing where you're really adding X% onto the bill. And if it's reasonable, you're going to get a pretty good take rate here. It's got to be reasonable, right? You can't double somebody's bill to do DDoS. I'm never going to do that. It's crazy. But some reasonable percentage will definitely do it. So, and then retention growth, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, if I turn it up, and there's another, like, let's say I have an opportunity to go to a different ISP, and they don't have this, and I think, well, I've been checking all the boxes on my the TPRM forms. that I do with my customers. If they don't do this, I got to go uncheck the box, kind of a pain. So again, you're getting the tenor of this. I'm not suggesting that, there's this, gigantic, overwhelming threat. Oh my gosh, you'll never get through the week without this. That's not the tenor of this. The tenor of this is it's easy to do. It can be aimed at you. It's easier to do now than it used to be. And it's not just big businesses. So look, this is the kind of thing that we can prevent easily and very reasonably. Let's do it. What's the point? And if you just wait for it to happen, then you're going to be scrambling. And you'll wish that you'd done this, and you're going to waste a lot of time, and your IT team's going to be annoyed, and then you probably end up coming back and buying it anyway. So why not just do that in advance of all that nuisance? It just strikes me as a reasonable decision. Again, with finance, this is stuff that I included. You saw the picture of the report that Nair showed on the first chart. That's something that my team and I worked on, because I wanted to understand this. Like, I enjoy working with a lot, but I'm a researcher and I like to know how these things work. And it struck me that you can sort of do a very simple ROI calculation. I think a lot can even provide you with an ROI calculator, which you can use. And you may even have your own. Most ISPs have that already. And you feed in the variables and you help people with ROI. This is all about wasted time. This is the kind of thing. Now, again, could a hospital go under? Yeah, I mean, you DDoS a health center, you have a big problem. So yes, there are real threats to certain companies, and those will be the kinds of things you will have already been engaged in. If you're the ISP for a hospital, then you've already had discussions with their CISO about ransomware. And, hospitals are sort of on the edge of SME, SMB, mid-sized. There's certainly some small regional hospitals that will be talking to you about ransomware. So you're already engaged in that discussion. But with the ones where you're not, I think that this idea that your team would be, cut to 50% capacity for a week is very reasonable. If you're at DDoS, there's all kind of problem. I got to diagnose it, figure out what's going on, talk to the service provider, get a sense of it, whether this is still happening, what are we going to do, and blah, 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 all of that. You're bringing your team down. And whatever you pay that staff member or staff members, just figure out their weekly salary, cut it in half, and that's money that you're spending, on an instant just to deal with the aftermath, not the disruption to the team. So you add all that up, and that's part of what you would probably embed into some sort of a risk calculation. I think it's pretty straightforward. Again, I'd suggested that you're not going to be doubling anybody's bill. We played with some models, like the Allot team and I, we sat down and we played a little bit. Like 6 to 8% uplift seems like the normal kind of reasonable thing. There's certainly, you'll have a lot to say as the service provider. You'll have a marketing team that will have an opinion about that. So we're just kind of giving you an idea what we think is reasonable. But that's a decision your chief marketing officer will make. That's been my experience. Obviously, they'll think that through. I could even imagine some paying. I'm going to give away for free. I mean, you're going to have to pay a lot, but you have to think through the equation, and you'll see everything from this being very modest to something that might be a little bit higher priced for companies that really do need it. You can tier this sort of thing based on size. It's kind of funny for me to see things like 10 gig there. When I first started building this type of thing in the 2000 to say 2012 timeframe, those first 10 or 12 years, we were selling in units of 1 megabit per second. So these little teeny ripples now, but then it was a big deal. The size of your internet connections were, much smaller. Everything was proportionally smaller. But an attack like a 5 gig or 15 gig attack, 20 years ago would have blown my mind, which it did. In 2012, we saw that big, giant, set of nation state attacks aimed at the US banks. And I don't think I slept for 2 weeks, really trying to work to figure out how to deal with this. And we basically just added at least 1 0 to the to the size of the attacks and also to the size that we needed. In some cases, it was adding 3 zeros. That was a tough, 2012 was a tough year. I know that a lot has shown me that there's this idea of maybe 30-day trials and stuff. The issue with trials and DDoS is that they are hard to demonstrate. It's like, here, let's do a trial. Okay, great. For 30 days, you go, look, nothing happened. So it's not always so easy. Like you will have customers saying, hey, can I try this? You're going to have to make sure they understand that this is the kind of thing that's not all that terribly visual. Like if I was selling you something that, stops malware attacks, then we can put it in place and aim a malware attack at it. I'll show you in a minute. There are some sort of demos that can be done that will help illustrate how it works, but you certainly don't want to put this in place and then bombard a company with attacks. That's not, as an ISP, you wouldn't want to do that. In fact, probably against your policy to even consider doing that for a customer. That would not be the kind of thing that would make much sense. So I'd stay away from that. The go-to-market. So this is something, again, your team will have a go-to-market concept. I think what we've played with, between my team and a lot we've played through, how do we make sure that we provide playbooks to your team? How does a lot provide that kind of capability? We came up with 4 things that we thought would probably be added to your existing go-to-market approach. Again, we are not new at this, any of us, and we know that ISPs, CSPs have their own go-to-market, and we're not suggesting they change it. But here are 4 things that I think have to go. And one is there has to be some kind of awareness so that we're making it clear what this is. I think there will be a percentage of SMEs that'll say, what is DDoS? They will, like if I'm making shoes or something, and I'm just not living in that world. And then, I just buy service and, don't think too much about internet service, just connect to Wi-Fi, and Google things about shoes. Then when you're discussing, renewal and you're, having a wrap going on with the client and you say, we want to talk to you about DDoS, they're going to say, what is that? So I think there in go-to-market, there will have to be some tailored messaging or even some resources that could be useful. It's easy to just say it's this big barrage from hackers that'll take your connection out. It could be as simple as that. Consideration means once they're aware, that it's determination of whether this is a good return on my investment, period. Now, I'm going to spend the money. What am I getting? Again, that's 101 small business. Not a lot of, advanced nuclear calculus in this. This is simple stuff. If I spend the extra money, what do I get? And that's something from a go-to-market perspective that has to be laid out. The purchase should be something consistent with whatever you do now. Like this should not be, in our mind, a complex ordering process. It should be easy. It should be, the onboarding and installation. However you're doing that, and we can make sure that on the back end that's nice and simple and integrated with the way a lot would do this. So and that's the advantage of being a service provider and having a platform. You can add things on. That's the definition of a platform, right? That you build some base foundational utility. And then on top of that, I can layer and add new types of capabilities. And that's where the concept of ARPU came up, this, driving additional revenue on each of the different transactions that you're making with your customers. And then the last is we talked a little bit about, within amongst ourselves, this idea of retaining. You're expanding certainly, and as a company expands, you'd expand with them. But retention is the key here. That if you provide this, certainly this becomes something that the IT or office manager will use with third-party risk forms, and then that becomes kind of sticky because they're not going to want to uncheck that box. So keep that in mind. There's the kinds of things that people would be thinking through. In terms of messaging, we sketched out a few things that we thought made sense. Business continuity is a term that large companies use all the time. With a small company, they just business interruption. We took us offline. We weren't able to handle orders. We were out. We were down. Those are the terms that they'll use. And these are the kinds of things that you're going to reinforce as you're having the discussion with your SME customer that during an attack, some stuff is your team is scrambling, and you may not be taking orders. You may not be functioning properly. Yes, can you scramble? Yes, can you send everybody home? Yes, can you send the lawyers down to Starbucks to use the Wi-Fi? I mean, who the heck wants to do that again? You can. You definitely can. It's not like, this is the kind of thing that for some businesses is a catastrophe, but for some it might be. So business continuity might be a term that you sort of introduce to the conversation, again, because an SME will not have typically been using that term. That's more what something comes up with the larger companies. The no agent installs and stuff we've talked about already, that you're just showing them that you don't have to do anything. Because let's say it's an IT manager that you're talking to. One of the first things they're going to ask you is, all right, if I do this, what do I have to install? And the good news is you can say nothing here. So it's the best answer of all. That's that frictionless we talked about earlier. That's what that means. That's the definition. You don't do anything. And that, again, for an IT manager, they'll be smile ear to ear and say, tell me more. That's why we like this kind of service for SMEs. Regulatory and stuff like that, they're certainly there. PCI, you fill all that stuff out. I do that, with my team every year. And it's a big, long checklist. And there's a section in there that asks about network security. Most people either put not applicable or, I don't know what they put. I think people sometimes get super creative with these regulatory forms. NIS2 is more outside the US. That's a big deal. And ISO also international. So it's all of these different frameworks that you have to provide answers to as a small business. We're just making life easier for you. And, I put the same as Fortune 500. Maybe that's kind of a cool message. Like this is a protection that used to not be available to you. It's the kind of thing your big bank or your big transportation company or airline, they've been doing this, but now we can provide this kind of thing to you. Your small business can enjoy the kinds of protections that we've seen at larger companies. So there's a lot of really good messages that I think will make sense. There's a toolkit that I know a lot of folks will want to talk to you about. They've shown me. I helped develop a little bit of this. Again, out of pure joy, because this is something I've wanted to do and see happen more aggressively for my whole career. Again, I mentioned weeks of not sleeping when this kind of thing happens, and have sort of committed in my own career to do whatever I can to try to help this kind of attack go away. It's one of those attacks that has that asymmetry associated with it that we talk about a lot. Like I do some nice consulting over, our tag team over at Johns Hopkins, the Applied Physics Lab. And there's a really amazing group over there called the Asymmetric Operations Group. Incredible research going on there. It's all founded on this idea that when it takes a little bit of work to make a big problem, we call that asymmetry. And DDoS always struck me as that. I mean, it's that amplification. I can hit a botnet and amplify it. It's like this big crowd of an attack that I'm originating from a point source. And that always sort of terrified me. Whenever I see things too asymmetric, I get a little upset. But all these things you have here in this toolkit can help you then go make these smaller businesses a little bit more secure. It's frictionless, not some crazy fee that they're paying. This is all very sensible stuff. And that makes me happy because I like to see sensibility brought to this discipline, to cybersecurity. Last thing I'll mention before I'm going to turn it over to Nir is that I've kind of underplayed some of the compliance and regulatory things only because I think for the most part, small businesses don't tend to consider that to be a gigantic issue. But a couple things. Number one, I do think that's going to change. I think regulatory controls are going to get a little bit more strict. But the second thing is insurance. So this is one where I really spent a lot of time on this, and I buy cyber insurance, and I also deal with a lot of cyber insurance companies. This is a good decision when we make a purchase of cyber insurance because we're transferring residual risk away. The first goal is if I can use controls to stop all the risk, I wouldn't need cyber insurance, right? Like I think maybe with autonomous vehicles, it's possible that you won't be buying auto insurance, right? I mean, if you take that away, I don't need the auto insurance. We're not taking cyber away. So I think if anything, we're becoming more dependent on it. So I think the money that you'll probably save in auto insurance down the road, you're probably going to be spending more on cyber insurance. And I think these kinds of things, these controls like DDoS, are definitely going to become more relevant. They're going to be things that could be mandatory. It's hard to say. They're not now. And I would put in here that there may be some discounts. It's a squirrely kind of area right now. Cyber insurance is a tough business. So you talk to one company, there's discounts, one there's not. It's kind of all over the map. But the point is with small businesses, because I am one, as I said, we do have to buy it. I buy it because when I have a bigger customer and they say, do you have cyber insurance? I say, yes. Do they ask the specifics of the policy? Typically not. And what I find is the policies can be quite terrible. It's more of this binary, you have it, but if they ask another question, is it any good? I probably, if I'm being honest, would say, doesn't seem like such a great deal. But this kind of thing, this area where we're reducing risk for a small business, I think that's part of a wave of maybe making the insurance deals better. So I am very bullish on that. I think that you do a bunch of these controls and that industry will get a little bit more comfortable writing us better policies. Right now, I think they're nervous and they certainly stack the policies in the direction of the insurance company, which is always the case. But cyber is a very unique case for that. So again, before I turn it over to Nir, because he can tell you a little bit about little bit more about the specific service. I just want to summarize by saying if you're an ISP, then welcome to my community. I consider you part of people that I grew up with and continue to interact with. This is sensible stuff. You ought to think about how you can roll this platform in, do the go-to-market and take this to your SMEs, SMBs. And I think you'll notice the take rate is pretty good. And the friction around deployment, you're not going to have that kind of a problem. So seems very sensible. I hope that you take that seriously. So with that, Nira, I'm going to ask you to come back on and talk a little bit about the specifics of the service here. I'll hang out with you, and then perhaps there'll be some questions at the end. But why don't you tell them a little bit about this DDoS secure offering, which I've alluded to, but I haven't really given many of the specifics on. Oh, still not hearing you, Nair.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can. We can.
Okay,
you have that
great.
Headset. You look like a radio disc jockey with that headset on. It looks good.
Thanks. It's actually pretty good.
It looks good.
So thank you, Ed. It was really insightful, especially in how the market landscape is shifting and why the timing is right for this kind of initiative. And so now let's take a closer look at the solution itself, what it actually delivers, how it fits into your existing services, and most importantly, how it becomes a scalable and recurring revenue stream. So from this point on, we'll shift gears into execution mode. Let's get to the heart of the opportunity. What exactly are you offering to your customers? And how does it make you money? And the answer is right here in front of your eyes, DDoS Secure. It's a telco-grade platform, purpose-built for telcos like you that always allow you to deliver an always-on DDoS and botnet protection as a service to your small and medium enterprise customers. This is not a generic cloud solution or a bolt-on product. Think about it. You already manage the network, right? And now you have the ability to secure it in real time for thousands of businesses with zero operational friction. This platform is fully multi-tenant. It's highly automated and seamlessly integrated into your existing infrastructure. It's designed to help you launch fast, scale effortlessly, and generate recurring revenue without becoming a cybersecurity company overnight. In other words, you're not just protecting your customers, you're creating a new revenue line for your business. That's where the real power of Allot DDoS Secure lies. Next, Ed. So let's now shift the lens to your customers. What will they actually experience with the service? And, you know, I think the beauty here is in the simplicity. The onboarding is completely frictionless, just like Ed talked about earlier. There's no hardware, no manual setup, no configuration needed. As soon as their subscribe protection is active in the background and they get visibility, you know, not complexity, as you know, some of the other players in the market do. That's what this screenshot that you see shows. The end user portal offers a clear, easy to read insights into what's being blocked, what threats were stopped, and how the service is working for them. It's designed for non-technical users. Your customers doesn't need to know what a volumetric attack is. As a matter of fact, they just need to see that their business stayed online. And the level of transparency builds trust, and trust lead to long-term retention and lower support overhead for you. Next, Ed. Thanks. So let's talk about the Allot Secure Suite. That's our flagship platform that enables telcos to deliver network-native cybersecurity services to their customers across both consumer and SME segments. At its core, Allot Secure transforms security from a complex IT challenge into a fully monetizable telco-delivered service, which is embedded directly into your network, your brand, and your business model. So what actually does it include? As you can see, the service is zero touch for customers. So basically activation is done at the network level, meaning no apps, no configuration, no friction. Then customers receive a white label security portal that gives them real-time threat visibility, reinforcing your brand as their digital safety provider. And behind the scenes, the platform is multi-tenant, cloud-ready, and designed for scale, so you can launch and expand quickly across both fixed and mobile networks. And for SMEs who face the rising threats, like Ed talked about earlier, you know, these are often lack the internal security expertise, and we extend the suite with Allot DDoS Secure. Allot DDoS Secure is a network-level solution that provides automated detection and mitigation of DDoS and botnet attacks that is tailored basically for the SME market. It can be flow-based or inline. It integrates seamlessly into your network, no CPE required, and it is optimized for mass deployment to your SME customers without any additional operational burden. And just like the rest of the Allot Secure Suite, it is designed to be monetized, meaning bundled into your business internet plans, sold as a value-added service, or maybe a value-added security tier, or offered as a service together. Allot Secure and Allot DDoS Secure gives you the comprehensive carrier-grade platform to deliver your security at scale, while opening new revenue streams and deepening the customer loyalty. So you already provide connectivity, right? So now you can protect it and profit from it. So now with that, we wrap up. You've seen the opportunity, right? SME are underprotected, increasingly attacked, and actively looking for trusted, simple solutions. We've seen the platform, a lot DDoS secure, which is purpose-built for telcos, easy to deploy and ready to scale across your SME customer base. And you've seen the strategy. So you now know how to package, price, and message, as well as launch a security service that delivers value for your customers and obviously revenue for your business. As a follow-up, you'll receive a copy of the full go-to-market handbook, and you will also receive a recording of today's session straight to your inbox. If you have any questions, so anyway, feel free to send it over even after the webinar or on our website at allot.com. You can also reach out for us for any other question or challenge. And we also invite you to check out our growing library of webinars and use cases that are available on demand on the resource section of the Allot website, which is allot.com, as you may know. And when you select the webinars on demand in the resource type filter. So with that, thank you again for joining. And again, a special thank you for our special guest, Ed, for the insights. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Nir.
And for all of you looking forward to continue the conversation, thank you and goodbye.